Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Castlevania video. I know I just did a video on Symphony of the Night, but both that and this video are ideas for challenges I've had in my head for quite a while. And seeing as how Nocturne came out, like, yesterday, I figured I may as well get both of them out of the way, but this is going to be my last Castlevania challenge for the near future. But anyway, this idea spawned from a video I did last year where I beat Nocturne on Merciful difficulty. SMT Nocturne, not Castlevania Nocturne, while only doing mandatory battles. Which I actually just did for SMT4 on normal difficulty, and now I'm going to be doing it for Castlevania Symphony of the Night. What I'm going to be doing here is, I'm going to play through Symphony of the Night while trying to get as few kills as possible. In fact, unless it's actually required that I kill an enemy to move on, I won't. Some might call this a low-level challenge, some may call it a pacifist challenge, but whatever the case, I'm going to be playing through the game while trying to get as few kills as possible, because I want to see how few you need to beat the game, and if it's realistically possible to beat it with the minimum amount of experience. I mean, it probably is because this game is really easy, so for this reason, I won't be going far out of my way to get any really powerful items. I mean, with the inability to fight optional bosses, my options are kind of limited anyway, but I just want this to be kind of a casual minimalist run. Not necessarily a speed run. If there is something that will help me that isn't too far out of the way, I'll go get it, but I'm only going to be backtracking when it's absolutely necessary. Oh, and unlike my last video where I played the Saturn version, this time I'm going to be playing the version that was included in Dracula X Chronicles for the PSP. This version changed the dialogue, shuffled some items around, and added Maria, who was in the Saturn version, but here she was changed to play more like she did in Rondo of Blood. However, the weapons and areas that were included in the Saturn version are still absent here, apparently because Igarashi just doesn't like the Saturn version. Personally, I prefer the Saturn version, but from a technical standpoint, this is the best version. So yeah, and before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to this video's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Everhood Eternity Edition. Everhood Eternity Edition is a new indie game from developer Foreign Games, and it is one of the most unique indie games to be released in recent years. Just from looking at it, it may look like an ordinary RPG, but all your expectations are subverted once you start playing. Now, recall all those rhythm games you played back in the day, like Guitar Hero or Rock Band? Now imagine that, but with combat. The gameplay of Everhood has you dodging enemy attacks and fighting in this rhythm-style arena. It's truly a unique experience that you can't get anywhere else, and it's a lot of fun. Combine this with a gripping story, some beautiful retro-style visuals, and an electrifying soundtrack, no pun intended, Everhood is definitely an experience you don't want to miss, and now, due to popular demand, it's coming to both PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series S and X. Check it out right now using the link down below in the description. I want to give a big thank you to Everhood for sponsoring this video, and now, let's get back to the video. So I start the game, I do the whole Richter fighting Dracula intro thing, and I fumble a bit in his second form, which causes me to run out of HP, forcing Maria to come in and save me. I don't like having to do this, but Dracula's almost dead anyway, and I don't feel like restarting the game. We get our opening exposition, and now we can enter the castle as Alucard. And I know I just started, but it feels really weird going through this part without killing any enemies. Getting around the wargs without killing them is a bit tricky because my jump doesn't reach high enough to go over them, but I'm only taking 1 point of damage, and if I land on the right side of their bodies, the knockback moves me past them. I can also jump over them completely by timing it with one of their attacks, but like I said, I'm only taking 1 damage, so I won't worry about it too much. I get to Death, who takes away my equipment, and almost immediately after that, I reach a small roadblock. I mean, look at this. It's almost like this part was designed just to be a middle finger to anyone attempting this challenge. Thankfully, the game does start me with a potion, so by using my invincibility frames from that, I am able to walk right through him. Now, the alchemy lab is a little difficult to get through. Getting through this one spot does require some precise movements and a lot of luck. I mean, I am getting knocked around a lot, but it doesn't take me too long to BS my way through. After that, I don't have any issues until I get to Slagra and Gaibon. These are the first 2 enemies I need to kill to move on, so I do just that. And despite me being only at level 1, these things barely put up any challenge, and I'm easily able to take them down despite being bare-fisted. I mean, I do have the knife sub-weapon, so that definitely helps. When the fight is over, I am automatically advanced to level 5, and that brings my total kill count to 2. Now, this next area is also a bit tricky to get through, more so than the alchemy lab. There are so many narrow hallways with enemies in them. However, the first one with the 2 skeleton soldiers, somehow I'm able to clip through them with knockback by backstepping into them. I do take a small detour to get the Basilard, one of the best early game weapons, and then I reach another semi-roadblock with the bloody zombies. It's another situation where the passageway is too narrow for me to jump over them, so my only option is to clip through them. I'm not exactly sure how this is supposed to work, but sometimes when I take a hit, I'm able to just clip past them, but most of the time not. But once I get past the first one, I can get past all the others by using the previous one's attack to knock me back past the next one. Though, I gotta be really careful because in order to do this, I have to take damage, and by the time I get to the next save point, I don't have a lot of HP. Once I get to the marble gallery, things do get a bit better because the hallways are much more open, but getting through that hallway with the flowers is still a little difficult. It's another situation where I technically can get over the enemies without taking a hit, but I have to be really precise and really lucky. Once I get to the outer wall, the first thing I want to do is get to this room guarded by this armor lord, which is kinda difficult to get past. In fact, for a moment I thought I wouldn't be able to get past him at all, but if I jump at him at just the right angle, I'll get knocked back into the room past him. Here, there isn't anything besides a breakable wall with a pot roast, but if you stand in this spot for 20 seconds, you'll be transported to this room below that you're not actually supposed to have access to for quite a while, and it contains the jewel knuckles and the mirror curious. I've always remembered this because my first time playing this game, I actually discovered this on complete accident. After getting the pot roast, I just put my controller down to message a friend on my phone, and the next thing I knew, I was in a different room with these 2 unique items. That was one of the highlights of my childhood as a gamer, but anyway, the next boss I need to fight to move on is the Doppelganger, who is nowhere near as hard as he was in my last video. Even though I'm faced with a lot of the same disadvantages, my attacks are now doing much more damage, and he only goes down in 5 hits. I advanced to level 9, however, this doesn't actually register as a kill on the pause screen. If I had to guess, it's because I can fight the Doppelganger again in the inverted castle, which I won't be doing, but I don't know, kinda weird. Now I have to go to the library to get the Jewel of Open. Getting through it isn't too hard. I mean, I can easily outrun most of the enemies by spamming the backstep, though the headless fencers seem to poke me in the butt every time I try jumping over them. But anyway, I head back through the alchemy lab and into the royal chapel. Now, at first I was worried about this place because the stairway is blocked by these bone pillars, which I can't jump over, but for whatever reason, when I'm hit by their fire breath, I'm knocked back toward them, not away, which allows me to pass through. I do this to get to the top, and it works, but at this point I barely have any HP left, and I still have to get through the other parts of the chapel. But thankfully, there's a life max up at the top of one of the towers. Though I do have some more narrow hallways to get through, but once again, I can do this by just jumping into the enemies. However, I am only left with 8 HP when I make it to the boss, though thankfully this is one of the easiest bosses in the game, and it just gets vaporized by my holy water and jewel knuckles. After that, I get to the castle keep, and I have a couple more narrow hallways I need to get through, which I am able to with a lot of luck, and I then get to the part where I have to get the leap stone. It's simple enough, you know, just hop across the platforms and pillars while avoiding the flea rider, or riders, there's 2 of them. No, wait, make that 3, or 4, or 5, and I'm dead. Yeah, welcome to the next roadblock. I have to make it across this big open area while being chased by 5 flea riders. They don't do a lot of damage, but there's not a lot of post-hit invincibility in this game. And pretty much every time, they do more than enough damage to bring my HP down to 0 before I can even make it to the leap stone. And even after I do get the leap stone, I still have to be able to make it back. I must have tried this for over an hour, and in my desperation, I found some use for something I don't think I've ever used before, the wolf ability. The wolf ability helps somewhat because with it I can move faster, but in order to make it over the pillars, my jumps have to be pixel perfect, and I can't have Alucard slow down for some inexplicable reason, which, you know, tends to happen in this form. But after maybe like 20 or so tries, I am miraculously able to make it to the leap stone without taking a single hit. I can't let a lucky streak like this go to waste, so I create a save state and then start trying to make my way back. It does take a few attempts to make it back, mainly because in addition to just making it back to the front, I also have to make sure I stay on top of the platforms before the entrance, otherwise I'll just bump into the wall and probably die. When I am lucky enough to make it back, I have just 3 HP to spare. Now that is what I call a close call, but I can say that it is possible to make it past that area without killing a single enemy and without dying. Next, I need to head to the Coliseum to get the Mist Soul, and as tempting as it is to try to get through some of these hallways and get whatever items are at the end, ultimately it's not worth the risk, and I'm still pretty satisfied with my Jewel Knuckles at the moment. I get to the part where I have to fight the Minotaur and the Werewolf, and it's still pretty easy, though this time it actually does take me a couple of tries. I'm not sure why I'm having a harder time than I was in the Saturn version. I guess I just got lucky in that one, but either way, it doesn't take me long to learn their attack pattern and melt them with a combo of Holy Water and Jewel Knuckle sandwiches. That was a terrible joke, I apologize. After I get the Mist Soul, I immediately head back to the library where I use my Leap Stone to make it to the next area, scrape my way through some rooms filled with Dull Hands and Flea Armors, and make it to the Lesser Demon. Now, because the Lesser Demon can spawn minions, I was actually wondering if they would count as kills if I killed any of them, and through testing, I can confirm that yes, they do. So I'm going to need to just ignore the other enemies and kill it before it can spawn too many, which thankfully isn't hard. I use the first few moments of the fight to get off as many hits as I can, and right after he spawns the first enemy, I am able to take him out. And thankfully, this not only kills any enemies he summoned, but they don't count as kills, and that brings my total kill count to 6 and my level to 16. So now that I have the Bat Soul, the next thing that I want to do is get the Power of Mist, for obvious reasons. One problem though, that's in the same area where I get swarmed with the Flea Riders, and yes, even if I approach it from the top, they still spawn in. Even though I'm now higher level and have better defenses, if I'm hit just once in my bat form, I change back and fall down to the bottom, so yeah, not really gonna work. At least that's what I thought at first, until I realized that I can move really fast by using my Wing Smash attack. This is one of those moves that requires a really complicated button combination, but with it, I am able to get to the place with the Power of Mist before any of them catch up to me. And after that, I can easily use my new ability to evade the others and make it back to safety. With the Power of Mist, I no longer have to rely on any weird video game physics or exploits to get past narrow hallways or areas filled with tough enemies. Now I can just turn into mist and pass right through. Granted, this does consume my MP, but if I get in a situation where I'm low, I can just stand in place in a safe spot until I have enough to make it through the rest of the area. It's a cheap trick, but for a run like this, I'm glad I have it. Speaking of cheap tricks, I then go back to the Royal Chapel, and using the potion invincibility trick, I get past the spiky hallway and get the silver ring. Then I head to the underground caverns. I go into the fake save point and fight the succubus, and this time it's even easier, and it goes almost the exact same way. You know, just dodge, punch, dodge, punch, dodge, punch, you get the idea. The only thing that's different is that she hits me with some kind of blood-sucking attack, which I don't think I've ever been hit by before, which curses me, but I just uncurse it off and then quickly finish her off shortly after. And that brings me up to level 21 and my kill count to 7. Now that I have both the silver and gold rings, there's only one thing left to do, and that is go to the clock room and fight Maria. And this fight is nowhere near as hard as it was in the Saturn version. She now attacks by sending animals after you, much more akin to how she fought in Rondo of Blood. These attacks are much more predictable, much less devastating, and she doesn't surround herself in a force field like she did before. For my first couple of attempts, I equipped the Claymore for extra range, but this doesn't really seem to be working quite as well as the Jewel Knuckles, so after that, I just go back to the Jewel Knuckles, and not only are they doing more damage, but there also seems to be an exploit where I can pin her into the corner, and this works until her second phase starts, where I get knocked back by her fireball attack, but after that, I just go back and start punching again, and then the fight is over. So I get the Holy Glasses, and then immediately make my way to the Castle Keep. I get to the room where Richter is fought, and after getting tossed around, I just use the cross to reveal Shaft and summon the Inverted Castle, which I immediately head to. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering why I didn't just use the Bypass Richter glitch when I did use the Potion Invincibility glitch. I mean, I suppose I could have used it, but neither the Richter or Maria fights give me any experience or count as a kill, and Richter isn't even hard anyway, and really, I'm just making excuses not to use the Richter skip because I'm bad at speedrunning and I couldn't do it. I admitted it, you can make fun of me. But anyway, once I get to the Inverted Castle, I make sure to get as many goodies as I can. And then I do what I should have done in the last video and challenge the Darkwing Bat first. And this boss is kind of frustrating. I mean, you all know what the deal is, it just flies around and blows wind at you. The main issue is that it has a very narrow hitbox, and my best weapon is still the Jewel Knuckles, but this is more of an up-close and personal DPS weapon with very short range, but not really ideal for an airborne boss. I can't use the cross either because I kinda swapped it out for the holy water on the way here, so what I do is switch to the bastard sword, which helps. I still get tossed around by the bat a lot, but it only takes me a few more swings to take it out. Now, as for the next areas, I mean, there's really not a lot to say, because like I mentioned earlier, with the power of Mist Soul, I don't really have to worry about enemies or hazards. As long as I have a decent amount of MP, I can just move right through everything. I eventually get to Medusa, which goes about the way you would expect, just a bunch of holy waters and she's gone. After this, I don't really think the holy water will be as much use to me as the cross, so I use a library card to backtrack to the library, which probably made the whole process take longer than it would have if I had just walked back to the area with the cross, but whatever. At least from here, there is a much shorter path to the reverse outer wall, although without the power of mist, there's no way I'd be able to get through here, so I sure am glad I have it. I pick up the Luminous on the way there, and when I'm there, I fight the creature, and I'm really glad I got the Luminous, because taking this thing on with the Jewel Knuckles would not have been pleasant. This sword gives me just enough range to hit his body without bumping into his hammer. So I swing at him while he swings at me in vain, then he does his rolling attack, and then I swing at him some more until I take him out. So that brings my level up to 28 and my total kill count to just 10. We are in the last stretch of the game, and only now did we just get our 10th kill. That's kinda crazy. Now, the next place I want to go to is the cave. Yeah, that's what it's called. But it's the reverse counterpart of the abandoned mine, which we didn't actually go in. But no matter where you're coming from, it's kind of a long trek to the Grim Reaper, who we need to fight to get our next relic. But it's nothing I can't easily bypass by turning into mist. Yep, all those rock armors and blue Venus weeds are no match for the invincible cloud of mist. Though in the area just outside of where Death is, I do get some war flashbacks from all the Gaibons flying around. Now, I'll admit I was a little worried about Death, but once I start fighting him, I soon realize that there isn't much to worry about. Mainly because of how much damage I'm doing. I mean, I do get knocked around by his attacks a few times in the first phase, but he goes down so quickly it's hardly a problem. His second phase is a little more problematic. I do take a few unlucky hits from his attacks, and due to unlucky knockback I get hit more than once. I get kinda low on HP during this phase, and it's one of the few bosses where I actually use a recovery item, and also use Soul Steal a couple times, which doesn't heal me by much, but it does some decent damage. And once I get below 100 a second time, I just say screw it and use my cross, and the first hit takes him out, so I probably didn't even need to do that, but it's still better to be safe than sorry. Oh, and each of Death's forms counted as a separate kill, so that brings my kill count to 12. That only leaves the Rib of Vlad, which is being guarded by Akmadon II. It's another long trek to get to him, but nothing that I can't cheese my way through using the power of mist. Oh, I also make sure to get some holy water on the way there. Just outside the area where I fight him, I have to get past some Malphuses, the first ones I've seen, and Akmadon is about as much of a joke as he was before. I just sprinkle some holy water on him, and he's dead now. But he was dead before. Ah, f*** him. I really hope someone gets that reference. His freaking dying animation takes longer than the fight. And yeah, that is it for the mandatory bosses of the Inverted Castle. As of now, we are at level 33 and just 13 kills. We have not had to kill a single enemy that was not a boss. That's crazy to think. Most people at this point in the game probably have a kill count in the quadruple digits. So the path opens up and we go inside the evil satanic cube thing where we have to fight Shaft. And this whole fight is just one big fustercluck. You got Shaft flying around in his little orb thing while smaller orbs orbit around him. Then he has the whole lightning attack, the fireballs which create pillars, the little bouncing balls. It's best not to think about it and just wail on him. If you do get low on HP though, Soul Steal actually works great here because each of his little orbs count as enemies. Even though you can't damage them, their hits will still register and will still give you HP. But it doesn't really matter much because he hardly has any HP of his own and will go down before you know it. Defeating him brings Dracula back out, and it is time. I pause the game and switch to the Jewel Knuckles because range isn't really going to be a factor in this fight, you know, with Alucard being in the middle and all. I also buff up with some strength potions because, you know, when else am I going to use these things? And I also eat some turkey just to be safe. And yeah, I then start alternating between punching Dracula and turning into mist to dodge his attacks. my attacks are doing a lot more damage than I thought they would, and they're hitting at a pretty consistent rate too. Dracula's attacks aren't even doing that much either. I do still have a bit of trouble with the claws though. I don't know, out of all the attacks that bosses use in the Castlevania series, that's one of the ones I've just never been able to get down, and I don't know why. The other ones though, I can easily dodge by just transforming into mist. There's not much to say. After a couple of attack cycles, I go for the cross, and to my surprise, it doesn't kill him. But I do have a heart refresh, which I use. Also drink some more potions to reapply my buffs, though this isn't necessary because the next attack from the cross finishes him off.
Go back to the abyss. Trouble the soul of my mother no more.
How could I have lost? Lisa, forgive me. Farewell, my son.
Dracula is defeated, the castle crumbles, and we're congratulated by Richter Belmont and Maria Takeba.
Alucard, you're all right!
And then the credits roll. So, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The minimum number of kills required to beat Castlevania Symphony of the Night without any crazy speedrun tricks is 15, while being at level 33. This was kind of a shorter video, but I wanted to get this one out to celebrate the release of Castlevania Nocturne, but whatever the case is, I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and until the next video, I will see you all later.